So here we are, episode number 50 of A Chatter of Fact. Now, how do we celebrate? Well, we celebrate by bringing on Jim Creeggan of the Barenaked Ladies. Now, normally, he'd be right here in the room with me, but these are quarantine times, so we had to socially distance the conversation. He's in Canada, I'm in the U.S., he's on his home studio, I'm on my home studio, we're on the phone, and it's still going to work. So you're going to hear the theme song, you're going to hear us count down, sync up, and then get into it. Here we go.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Boom, that'll work. That kind of will act as kind of the movie slap. So now I feel like we're good to go. And you're rolling on your end. Everything feels right.
Yeah, I can do a movie slap if you need that. It's like a John Wayne punch.
I cannot believe you can reference the John Wayne punch. Do you know that's like a stunt thing? There are certain stunt dudes that like reference that. Like it's a specific punch.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I assumed because it was like, I remember being just watching as a kid and going, no way are they making that sound when they punch guys in the face. It's probably, I'm assuming it's more like a wet bag of cement.
We just lost
sound.
Burt Reynolds, famous actor, old school actor. I don't know, last year maybe, and he was so into the stunt world, and he was showing. I saw him like giving a tutorial on fight scenes, and there's a specific John Wayne punch. And the only time I've ever heard that referenced is Burt Reynolds talking stunts, John Wayne punch. And the only other time I've heard it referenced is from you, Jim Creeggan. So
no way, and I didn't even know it existed. I just made.
I think.
Anyways,
it's a sign, man. I think it's time for you to stop music altogether and become a stunt man. I think.
You know what? I would love to be like the Jackie Chan of rock and roll, for sure.
We could like skip music altogether and just talk Jackie Chan for the next hour if you don't mind, because that's totally my stuff. Oh, okay, so we are officially rolling. Say hello to the world, Jim Creeggan.
Hello, world, Jim Creeggan.
So, folks, you're listening to A Chatter Fact. Again, these are not interviews; they're conversations. And this is my first. You are my first quarantined show, man. You're kicking this thing off.
Oh wow!
So we're all safe. I've never done this without somebody in the room. So this is weird. You're in spirit, but.
World premiere,
and we're international. You're over the Canadian border there, so this is crazy.
That's right.
I had something simulcast to South Africa once, but never. But the guest was still in the room, so this is insane. And
oh wow,
man, it's an honor to have you on, Jim Creeggan from the Barenaked Ladies. Everybody, I don't even have to say much more than that. You all know. Everybody knows. Right from jump, I have to tell you this. You and I met because we were on a gig together. We were on one of those kind of corporate gigs in Chicago. And you were so down to earth and so cool because we ran into each other at like the deli or something downstairs. We were just all scrounging for food before the gig the way musicians do.
In the bowels of a convention center.
It was the bowels. And you were so cool and conversational. And we were chatting just in line. I think we were like looking at soups or something. And then I'm talking to my guy.
as musicians might do from time to time.
Serious. You meet somebody from the Barenaked Ladies, and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, well, what do you think? The cream of broccoli? How's that look to you? But then...
That opens up a whole bag of worms. Bag of worm soup.
The other people got mad. You're taking too long, sirs. Please move on. But then you and I ended up having kind of an impromptu little pizza dinner chat in the bowels of that building before our gig. And man, you run into different people in different settings. Often
like there's the part of the job of being a musician, I guess, is this waiting to play.
Yes.
Like waiting to perform. So there's all these things that happen in that time, connections or hobbies or
boredom.
Just I'm always interested in what people do at that time. Because before I go on a tour, I kind of try to premeditate what I'm going to do with that downtime. And so I've had, if you talk to my band guys, many endeavors over the years, and each tour had its own sort of like attempt at a hobby. So at one point I was knitting, and the other one was which turned out I got a good neck warmer out of it. And are
you going to call it a scarf, or would you call it a neck warmer because it was just?
I've heard. I didn't want to say this on your podcast, but I've heard that it's been called a dickie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I just didn't want to come out. I don't know the audience.
I should have let you know
we
that
just met.
You.
I just want to come out with the dickie thing, but I think it's called a dickie, and I don't know why. Maybe a guy named Richard.
Did it have? By the way, we're unregulated too, so you can speak on whatever you want, however you want.
It's as far as I'm going.
Okay,
I'm already, I'm blushing already.
I'm not even going to ask then about what was at the base of your scarf, because there's something there, and
something there.
I don't know if I'm walking off that ledge with you just yet. Yeah, 1 minute into the talk. I got to tell you though, man. So when you're doing that. It's funny because you'll find that one thing, knitting. That's an interesting one. That's a tour story I have never heard before.
Well, it was a perfect thing. Like it was like it was a nice way to listen to music too, because there was something I was doing, and then while I was listening, I wasn't impeding. I just had to count the stitches and the pearls.
Man, I'll tell you, I have to give you a ton of credit for a number of things, though. But besides the obvious, because you guys created some pretty amazing music, and you guys had an amazing show, and you still have the amazing show. But the two things I really have to commend you on is when we sat down. First off, we were 5 minutes into meeting each other, and it's so cool when you meet a like-minded person, because we kind of had somewhat similar stories, just either dealing with the people or with personnel or things like that. And it was, we bonded over the pizza. It was really cool. I didn't feel like I was just trying to meet this famous dude who I'd seen for many years. You became a regular nice guy 3 minutes in. It was really cool.
I'm just trying to get to know him every day.
Who's that guy? Yeah, I want you to meet somebody,
Who's
Jim.
That guy?
I want you to meet somebody, Jim. And it's you. Because this is actually an intervention. That's what all this is about. We don't want you knitting anymore. And we have.
I'm talking about the man in the mirror.
we have your family and your first grade. Your first grade teacher.
I think I was on the harmony on that. Sorry.
Oh, that sounded right. I think that was.
I'm talking about the
man in the mirror. Yeah.
Yeah,
we just nailed it. So check this out. Between you being so down to earth and cool, the phase 2 of
trying to be,
you succeeded. But the phase 2 of that was, corporate gigs are so weird. It's such a difference between doing a show where people have paid to see you and they're there to see your show. And then when we get these corporate gigs that pop up, which are great gigs, sometimes it's like the VP of the company who's a huge fan, but maybe half the crowd isn't a fan, or they don't really know the act that well. And I've been in a lot of these scenarios where I've been able to work with a lot of famous people. I get to open up for a lot of groups like you. And the most interesting thing is the corporate thing is weird. Because they're not, everyone in that room isn't always there for you, or they might not be a fan, because their boss told them to go to the party and this is their boss's band. I don't know. Have you seen that energy where sometimes you do the corporate thing and everyone's in, and other times you could tell like, oh boy, you guys don't have my record.
Well, I think what I have personally learned to enjoy is that when you're playing a corporate gig, it's sort of an opportunity in a way to find what's common, you know, in that room, you know. And what's interesting is that there is a vibe usually, and they have a common story, or they have a, you know, they're all sometimes car salesmen or salespeople, and like, so you get to really, you know, play with that on stage, you know, like kind of speak to it. And so that, and in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier when you already have context, you know?
Oh, nice.
So that's one thing that's been good. And we love a challenge, man. You know, if people haven't heard of us before, don't know the tunes, like we try and make, you know, we try and grab them. So it's part of our entertainer's creed.
Well, here's
you know what it is.
yeah, I bought that scroll.
We want to get out there, and it was like, we flew all the way to Chicago, whatever. We're not going to waste this one. We're gonna give her.
Here's what was so awesome about that night is, since I've been able to bounce around at these gigs and perform with a ton of, you know, very famous people, it surprises me how sometimes somebody who's world famous will come into the room, and when they're up at bat doing the corporate thing, I've seen some people get up there and kind of phone it in, or kind of act like they're too good for the room, and you know, maybe the crowd doesn't know it, but I'm a singer, I can tell these things, and you can tell when somebody's either phoning it in or kind of acting like, oh, this is just a paycheck, let me get through this. You guys came into that corporate room and you guys just sold it, and you guys still act like a band that like just got signed. You guys still perform like a group that is just fresh on the scene and still loves it as much as they did from day one. So either you're like the most amazing actor in the world, or you're still into this thing, man, because I loved seeing the joy.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, you know how you say, like, you know, corporate gigs are weird, and for sure, I mean, the thing is that as a performer, you know, you're walking into this situation you've never, you know, been before, but also the people in the audience probably feel that same awkwardness, you know, like, what is going to happen? Why am I here? I'm not even finished my end of year statement or whatever, you know, my graphs or whatever their job is. And I like looking for that sort of awkwardness and sort of the unknown. And so, I get a lot of fun out of like interacting with the audience and like just saying, okay, well, I'm a bass player and I'm here rocking out. And who are you? Do you want to rock out too? You know, it's kind of like, I kind of pose the question sometimes. And so, yeah. But I think for us, like it's sort of being on stage, you know, in any context it's an opportunity to sort of elevate the moment, you know. So I always like to take advantage of that, you know.
The other thing is the crowd can tell that stuff, man. They can tell. They're smarter than we think sometimes, and they can tell when something's genuine up there, and you can tell that they're getting it when it's somebody who maybe doesn't know the music, and then suddenly they're into your show. And man, you're a hell of a performer, dude. You really put it all out there. It was really impressive. I'm like, look at this dude.
Well, the whole thing has changed. The thing has evolved for me. I mean, I'm a double bass player mainly, and that, you know, puts me in one spot. It's hard to travel on stage when you're playing the double bass. And I still love playing the double bass. And I do about half double bass a night and half electric bass. But once I got the electric bass, I realized, you know, I can move with this thing, you know. And I was always a freak on the dance floor at my high school dances and whatever, you know, any dance floor. And so I was like, maybe I should stroll around a little bit, you know. And I remember going to like Lollapalooza and seeing Les Claypool do this like bass walk, and that's all he did. He just kind of had this walk, and I was like, and he covered so much territory. There was a huge stage. It was Lollapalooza, you know, mid 90s, and I was like, that's a good walk, man. I want to try that, and it gets me over there in like one bar. You know, it gets me to the end of the stage in one bar, and so I get to like kind of like see what's up with those people. Are they into it, or like, can I like, I'm basically when I'm on stage, I'm looking for friends in the audience.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I'm looking for people who don't mind stepping outside of, and getting into it. And so I'm just looking for those people, like, and once we get a connection and we start doing a little back and forth, then that kind of includes the people around too, and it sort of has this rippling effect. So as soon as I started playing electric bass, I was able to kind of reach out a little bit more, like look out.
I can believe the dance floor story too, then, because you're very comfortably mobile up there, and you move well. So like
well, I like to have nice, comfortable and practical footwear.
Yeah,
as well.
That's important.
That's important.
Did you ever do one of the? You ever see the dudes who will go just no shoes, no socks up there? I still could never figure that out. That seems like the most uncomfortable thing.
Yeah, we just played with Hootie and the Blowfish, and Mark, the guitar player, was trying to keep true to the shoeless.
Is that how he rolls?
Guitar. Yeah, he's kind of a shoeless guy, sockless.
Man. Yeah,
and it was just, after a while, it's getting hard on his feet. I was like, dude, are you hanging in there? He's like getting massages and.
What does he do? Is it an image thing, or is it just, oh man, it's just feel more connected to the stage?
I get it, man. I remember looking at, videos of Jaco Pastorius with, Joni Mitchell, and seeing Jaco with just bare feet, and I was like, of course, man. It's like you're more connected to the ground, and I get it. I'm down.
It seems incredibly uncomfortable. I saw Joss Stone does that.
I've seen a lot of stages though where it's like nobody has swept that stage in a while, So I don't know. I don't need problems with my feet, but
bottom of your feet are like collecting, historical artifacts at that point. Your feet are Indiana Jones, man.
Yeah, hopefully it's friendly bacteria down there.
How are you handling? It's weird. I never talk about topical events on this thing, but it's hard not to, because of this whole quarantine time and stuff. So how are you handling that whole thing? How quarantined are you?
Well, I'm, in my, with my family in my house, in Toronto, and, we're lucky. We got it. We're pretty good, fortunate to have each other to, keep, each other like busy and social. How big's your family? We're four of us. So my wife and my daughter's 12, my son's 15.
Oh, those are pretty good ages, right?
Oh man, we're having a really good time. I mean, I'm cooking a lot, which is, I'm getting deep into Indian cooking and
Indian cooking. Okay, what's your jam? What are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just made aloo gobi last night. So a standard. I've always loved. I can do that with my eyes closed. I use this cookbook called I think it's just called Indian Vegetarian by Yamuna Devi is her name. Anyways. I was making aloo gobi last night, and I like to keep the legumes, the beans and rice going. So I think I found the chili of my life. It's like Punjabi. Yeah, it's Punjabi chili. It's like this. It's kidney beans, and you do this kind of puree with the ginger and water, and you add it to. It has like coriander, cumin in this sort of mixture, this paste that you put together while the beans are cooking.
Punjabi chili?
A little bit. Yeah, Punjabi chili. And then you add a little bit, it all ground it down. Like, cause I got, you got more time. So I'm like totally putting the rock to the rock and like grinding these seeds. So fennel seeds and ajwain seeds. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but they're like kind of licoricey. And of course fennel, and it just gives the chili like this deep, like several levels of flavor. And man, I totally totally recommend that.
That sounds legit.
So some tomatoes, and actually a little bit. I think I put a little paprika in there too, so you get that kind of tomato paprika sort of symbiosis.
See that, folks? Now, we just had our first ever somewhat cooking session on this show. There it is, right there. They can rewind that.
Oh, man.
They can make Punjabi Chili. I can't tell if that's like a good rapper name, stripper name, or like some
totally.
kind of,
Oh, yeah.
Coming to the stage, Punjabi
stage
Chili.
Name. Yeah, totally. Oh, my God. It's a great stage name,
It's
man.
not bad.
I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it.
A solo career.
You realized it was a stage name, but I'm stealing it back.
You're putting
But you can use it too.
Well, you know what?
Maybe we can Punjabi number 1 or Punjabi number 2.
I mean, this is how we're going to make money on this thing. If there's an American and Canadian version of Punjabi Chili, we're going to have to go worldwide,
That's right. Well, I'll do the Punjabi Chili review a la Canada.
That sounds good.
And you can do the U.S. version.
Yes, the Upper U.S. Punjabi Chili Tour is what I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm in.
But we need some repertoire. We got to get some repertoire together. But that'll be easy.
Who cares about the podcast at this point? This is a business meeting. I didn't know. We're just pitching.
Yeah, we're gonna Punjabi Chili. It's gonna be like Bollywood mixed with some of that egg rolling over kind of like salsa vibe.
A movie deal can't be that far behind, Punjabi Chili in the Temple of Death. I mean, come on. It writes itself. Oh, I'm so glad. We've had a very constructive chat so far.
I'm going to be practicing my stunts.
The John Wayne Punjabi Chili and the John Wayne Punch. Coming to theaters.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
Dude, art is going to take a weird turn because movies, people can't really make movies right now. It took a weird turn.
Art
right now
will never be the same. Art will never be the same. The shit is never been heard of, and it's changing. Turning the tables.
Oh,
of art.
Get me Marvel on the phone. We got a new superhero for him. Get me Marvel. Oh, it's gonna be.
I knew you had people back there.
Yeah, there's
I knew
always
you had people in the room.
A ton of people. I mean, I think they're mostly squatters, but I'm not sure. Just whoever these people
Gotta make
are.
them, yeah.
But they're cooking Punjabi chili right now. They're putting the recipe together.
They cannot go wrong. They cannot go wrong.
Oh man, I need to put your name as the title of this show, but it's really hard not to consider titling this episode Punjabi Chili.
Maybe because he is already a legend.
Boy.
Hasn't even. He's got a lot of mileage already.
Punjabi Chili and the Barenaked Lady, also good movie title.
That's great.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. You've probably been asked this a million times, but this is something I've not heard. Where'd that name come from?
Well, it came from a moment, I think is the best way to describe it.
Right.
It sort of was Ed and Steve when they were kind of just excited about each other's music, and they were riffing a lot, and they went to see a show. They went to see a Bob Dylan show, and Bob was having a rough night. They weren't, wasn't connecting, but we're big Bob Dylan fans, whatever. But they started thinking of pretend band names that they would have, and they weren't even a band at the time. They were kind of a duo. They were I think they had started playing in between like Battle of the Band sets. Uh-huh. So they were kind of like the in-between thing. They weren't even in the race, in the battle. So anyways, they just started coming up with stuff and trying to make each other laugh. And Banjo Fever was one. Punjabi Chili, I'm sure, would have been one if they were evolved enough.
They're not at our level. They weren't at our level just yet.
No, this is back in the 90s. Yeah. People didn't know better. But now, everything has changed.
Everything's changed.
And you haven't even eaten the Punjabi chili.
No, man. I haven't. I've only tasted its essence through your conversation.
It is a weekly event and a revelation every time.
Did you say weekly?
Yeah, I've been throwing down Punjabi Chili.
How does the
weekly.
Punjabi Chili play on the stomach when it's weekly?
Dude, it's well cooked. It just goes through you.
All right.
And it's a journey
To the restroom.
That is well, I think that beans are something that this, the coronavirus time it's made everybody wake up to beans. Like if you don't want to go to the grocery store all the time, you got a small fridge or freezer, as I do. You gotta dig into the beans and like for sure. Sometimes the beans, it's something happens. But Punjabi Chili is a smooth ride. It's smooth.
Something happens.
Smooth.
That is really well toned, man. I want to see that on the side of a Pepto
Something
Bismol
happens
bottle
down there.
When something happens, take this. That's nice. You're a marketing genius, man. No
when
wonder.
something happens,
Take this.
Yes.
Okay, so let me get into this, man, because I'm sure people can YouTube the heck out of people can YouTube the Punjabi Chili out of Barenaked Ladies stories and stuff. But yours in particular, like what got you into this game?
What, into
Music?
music?
Yeah,
or?
not Punjabi Chili.
Well,
what got you? Like, what was the
me
bug?
to Punjabi Chili.
Oh, fair enough.
I would say, well, it's sort of a step-by-step thing.
Well, let's go. And I want to try this on you. I have this weird story where when I was in the third grade, my dad was an old soul performer, and they were just kind of a footnote in music history. But one day, all these dudes who were like uncles to me just got together after 10 years and sang this a cappella version of Old Man River. I think it was like the Temptations a cappella version.
How old were you?
I was in the third grade. And hearing this a cappella sound, it was gorgeous and beautiful. And I think that's when the bug hit me I was just fascinated by singing and doing that thing. And then that's what eventually led to like finding their old 45s. I was a freak. I was into like weird old soul music and and oddly enough, the Persuasions, which you guys did some stuff with. I want to talk to you about that. But that one moment seemed to kick off everything. Like, do you have one of those weird moments where, the seed was kind of planted in you and you thought, oh, wait a minute, this music?
Yes, there was one moment. There's many. One I was just thinking about the other day, actually, because I've been playing a lot of I had a lot of Bach and a lot of like string quartets, a lot of just sort of lights, Mozart, Haydn kind of stuff. But I had a whole Bach day the other day, and I played the Brandenburg Concerto, and there was this teacher, Ted Husband. Ted Husband was like the guy that took a chance on, the kids. We were in grade 7. We were just, we were coming along. We had this little ensemble, and he said, you guys, you should really play the Brandenburg Concerto. And I was playing the double bass with a, it was just playing classical at that point, but I had just played, pretty straight ahead stuff, very, school string music. And all of a sudden the Brandenburg Concerto happens, with this little orchestra. And I remember playing that, and I was just like, this is amazing. Huh. Like this is the best thing I've ever heard. And, I'm sure it was a little scratchier than my memory brings it up. But when I heard that and I was a part of that, it just like, I was like, there is a whole world here that I am like, I want more of. Wow. I couldn't believe it. So that was a moment. And I was also, I was lucky. There was this great itinerant music program in our public schools in the 70s and 80s, and that's where that was where I met my band through that program. There was a music camp at the end of the year. Every year I started in grade 6, went all the way to grade 13.
You mean your first band, or like Barenaked Ladies, those dudes?
Barenaked Ladies. We met in our last year at music camp.
So how old were you?
And when I met the guy, Andy actually met Ed first, my brother, who was in the band at the beginning. And so he met Ed like when I was like 18 or 17.
What was that kind of like connection like? So were you playing bass most of the time? Was that your instrument from that like magical moment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was playing double bass, and then I got an electric bass in grade 6. And I remember playing again, like we had a great music program. We played Fame, right? And I was playing electric bass. I had to look at this bass part, and I just remember thinking, oh, this is special. This is like, I started connecting with that feeling of when something's really solid and groovy and it's with people. So I think that was the beginning of it. And then, there was other moments,
Yeah.
being in the basement with my brother and him on the drum kit and me playing bass. And I remember overloading. I wanted to sound like AC/DC, but I was a bass player. So I remember just turning this little stage amp, everything up, crank to tone, everything, and just playing chords. And it just blew this amp through the, the cone was like obliterated. Anyways, I had this wah-wah pedal that I didn't use for a wah-wah. I pressed it a certain way, and it got that big like sound.
So you were just trying to get like the dirtiest sound you could accomplish?
Yeah, I was trying to get AC/DC, and anyways, I remember doing that and going, this is like the best thing ever.
Man, so stylistically, you're pretty eclectic then, like the stuff you were listening to. Because what was your jam, through the years? Was it really all over the place?
Well, I mean, it really was whatever I was exposed to. But I really, I also went to church till I was like 14, and so I sang, basically Bach chorales. Like it was like Anglican church, and there was like Bach chorales, so all that harmony, and so and it was like real messy, like it was like ragtag, church. But all the characters I still have them in my mind. Mrs. Dollery, Mrs. Swan, the organist, was like always had these like minty candies, and it was a freaking hilarious.
Oh man, I love the fact that inside of 20 minutes, though, you've referenced Bach, Michael Jackson, and AC/DC. See, that's eclectic.
Right, sure.
And then you rounded it out talking about church music. See, that tells me everything.
Yeah. So and so, anyways, that the singing harmonies was a big part of that world, and it wasn't. And also, the other big influence for me is that my mom taught piano lessons, and so I would hear all like Bach and Brahms, and that Magdalena notebook for Magdalena, that Bach book that he gave to his second wife. Is this cool that most of those kind of piano conservatory songs were based on or taken from. And so I was hearing the neighborhood kids play all these tunes. And so my ears were always being fed like every day. And so that was kind of cool. But I didn't know that, how that would work out. It was, but that's what was definitely in the room. And then once I got into playing in bands, I really like swing music. I like Elvis music,
nice.
And also the music from American Graffiti. So doo-wop was like, I loved it. I loved swing. I loved the feeling of like the walking line and the bass, and just the swing was really grabbed me.
Thrill, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And
cool.
All that American Graffiti, soundtrack record, had all those doo-wop hits, and then so my first band we played Elvis stuff, like Santa bring my baby back to me.
Wow.
Santa bring my baby back. I need a lot of presents, that stuff.
Man, I never realized how much of his stuff had that that vibe to it, that same kind of, that's not a shuffle. What would you
Swing.
call it? You know, because now when you said that, I don't know that tune, but it brought me to the return to sender, you know, address unknown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and also another thing too, it's all funny because, you know, I get it through these channels, but we had an 8-track of Sha-Na Na. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Again.
So, folks, all right,
so
anybody that's like way younger, folks, Sha-Na Na, like they really got huge in the 70s, I think. And basically, guys, they would like dress the part like 50s and 60s, folks. For you, I don't know, any of you hipsters that have no idea what I'm talking about, just Google like the 50s and 60s Sha-Na Na. Like, and they were great because they were like a tribute act in a way to like 50s, 60s music. Yeah, that's right. Dude, I haven't even thought of that name in forever.
And didn't they play at Woodstock? Am I crazy?
You're right.
Just like one of the songs starts with like, "This is going out to all you fucking hippies," or something.
I like the idea of Sha-Na saying like, "You fucking hippies."
At Woodstock, like that's pretty cool. Anyways, I think that happened. I'm not sure.
No, they were because I remember hearing about that and feeling like that's odd and cool. Like it just,
and they were playing the conservative 50s guys.
Yeah,
greased up and like I never quite understood that.
Good night, sweetheart.
Okay,
well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to dude, go. Billy Sheldon, you're not gonna believe this. I hate to leave you, but I really must say good night, sweetheart. Good night. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. You're a human bass. You're a human bass. You want to hear something really cool?
Well,
there's one of the last surviving members of the original group. They're called the Spaniels. His name's Billy Shelton, and he lives near Chicago here. And I had him on the show because I needed him to sing that bass part to me on the show. And by the way, you know the mindset that you have. Talk about just inspirational. This dude I think he's 80 now, and he's still performing, and the Spaniels are still touring, doing Goodnight Sweetheart. And for a while, when I first started out, because my bag is I'm in that kind of corporate world doing a lot of those parties like what we did, but then I'm a little bit of an original guy, and I'm out there doing it. I'm not anywhere where you are, but 200 times a year I'm on some kind of stage doing something. And for a while I was touring with those oldies acts. I was singing backups, and then I'd like open up the show, and I got to sing with that dude and became friends with that guy. We're dear friends. But get this, we would do, they would do like these kind of 3,000 seaters, those nostalgic shows where it's like 8 oldies acts all crammed into one show. It's kind of like an old person's Lollapalooza. So, that was really interesting. But I did a show and I sang with him. And I wanted to hear all these oldies people, like the Tokens, like the Lion Sleeps Tonight dudes were there. Like all these original guys are there.
Oh, my God.
So I'm sitting in the wings after I do my set with this guy, who sang Goodnight Sweetheart, who did like the bass part. And we're sitting there chilling. And the first thing he says to me, right when we get off the stage, I just stay there on the wings and I'm watching the show. The crowd's cheering, and he just like elbows me. And he says, "Look at that! You see those faces? Like, look how happy those people are." He goes, "Just remember that. That's what we're doing this for. That's why we're here."
Yeah, man.
We're spreading
joy.
That's
something that you mentioned. Like, I got into Elvis, and actually, I was in a cappella quartet.
Nice.
And we called it the Synthetics, a la the Nylons, which is a Toronto a cappella group, right? You're
going to respect this. Guess who the next guest is going to be following you?
Who?
Claude McKnight from Take 6.
Oh, wow.
Those dudes?
That guy, man. Yeah. Shit.
They're crazy. So you did the a cappella thing.
They were huge heroes of mine, right? Especially when I was doing a cappella.
I don't know if I've heard better singers than them.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, where are you gonna find better singers?
It's just
nowhere.
nowhere.
Anyway, so and then we were fortunate enough to get together with the Persuasions on the last record, and we made a record with them.
All right, talk to me about.
And I was
going
to say that feeling, what that guy said to you, look out there, seeing all the smiling faces, like that is something the Persuasions really brought home for me. Is like we had this gig with them. We were going to do a couple songs, and we had this gig in Brooklyn, and they came out to hang out, and they were going to sing on a tune with us. We practiced a little bit, then we were just hanging out all afternoon. And I went up to Jimmy, and the bass singer, and I went, so how did, just what you asked me, how did you get started? And he goes, well, and he just said, there's this song, and he just starts singing the song, and everybody joined in. Like we just sang all afternoon
with the Persuasions
round a table. Yeah, with the Persuasions all afternoon, just going, like the songs were marking the time. Like, and I remember even talking to Jay Otis, and because I was saying, you ask these guys, like, did you ever meet Ray Charles? Like, and he was like, oh, Ray, oh yeah, well, we did a show with Ray, and he actually came into our dressing room and really wanted to hear our version of Mona Lisa. Wow. And so then they just started singing it.
Oh my God.
And it was like, and they were just talking about how Ray reacted to their playing, their singing, and how he loved it because he really wanted to hear the harmonies. And so basically I said, like, okay, well, maybe these guys are my way into like gospel music, because I need to know, like, I love the way they sing. Like, what would they recommend gospel wise? So I remember I asked Sam, and who was kind of the gospel guy in the group, he just gave me this great list. I'll just give you some right now. Should I just say I got it right here? And whenever I go to a record shop, I always look at these. He had the Swan Silvertones. Oh, they do this version of "Oh Mary, Don't You Weep," and it's like it's like this the Mighty Clouds of Joy. I mean, I'm probably saying stuff that people know already, but this stuff was like the Soulsters,
they're still around. They're still doing it. Soulsters are still. Yeah, I toured with them here and there over the last 5 years. They're still out there, and they still sound phenomenal. Okay, wait a minute. First off, I want to let the crowd know, for anybody that doesn't know, the Persuasions probably hit their peak, I'm going to assume, maybe in the early 70s, I think, when their albums like really started getting some attention. I think
like
that's
Street Corner Symphony,
right?
Street Corner Symphony,
yeah, dude,
big one for them.
And they were an a cappella group. And they actually reclaimed some fame, I think, on some American NBC show, some a cappella thing. At least Jerry Lawson did. But for you folks who haven't heard that, just find, you could still find them on Spotify. You want to get something really interesting, which I want to delve into. The Barenaked Ladies did like an album with them, which surprised the hell out of me. And it's just hardcore, real a cappella singing, like real street corner singing. Even the way it was mixed. I remember like the early one when I first bought it, and I'm listening to the album. You just hear the lead on my left and the background's on my right, like in my headphones. It's crazy. But for anybody that doesn't know that group, I don't know. I was listening to some a cappella group locally. I can't remember who it was, and I had like an album. And my dad walked into the living room, and he's like, "What are you listening to?" I'm like, "It's just a cappella. It's pretty cool, huh?" He's like, "No, it's not." He goes, "Come with me," and he throws me in the car, and we go right to a record store. And then he buys 2 Persuasion albums. He's like, "Listen to this," and that was my introduction. But those dudes. I mean, it's that sound. There's a move that Jerry Lawson, the lead singer, does in, I think the song was called The Sun, which I remade with an a cappella group. And then there's a certain move he did in their version of Gypsy Woman, too, I thought was really cool. But he did this, whoa, 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 and
Yeah.
As soon as I heard that move when I was 13 or whatever, I mean, for decades I've been going, oh, I've been using that riff, and I think of him. It's just it's real, and
that is his sound.
That's his move.
It's amazing to hear you do that.
Yeah, and you know, I can't remember what. There's looking for an echo or something. He doubles down. He does like 4 of them in a row. The whole intro to the song is oh. It's like, there it is. Give me more of the move, Jerry. And it's so great, man. But I gotta ask. I wanted to talk more about some of the early years for you, but I gotta jump ahead here. How did that even happen? When I accidentally stumbled on a Barenaked Ladies Persuasions, and my brain exploded. I couldn't understand how those two worlds met.
Well, it was the Persuasions did an album with Lou Reed, or they sang on a record with Lou Reed.
Okay. And
Kev in my band was Lou Reed's music director for the last couple of years. And so Kev actually at Lou's funeral met Dave Revels, who leads the band right now, leads the Persuasions. And they got talking, and I mean, like I said, like I was into doo-wop. I was the bass guy in doo-wop, and I actually didn't realize this till I was standing right in front of them. Once we got the session going together, that I was learned Why Do Fools Fall in Love from their version with Joni Mitchell.
Oh, no way.
Shadows and Light. And it's funny, like they were in my studio and we were rehearsing, and I was like, Jimmy, you know, I learned like doom bop doom bop doom bop doom bop doom bop doom bop. You know, you're the guy. Like, I didn't even know that, but I put 2 and 2 together. And Jim wanted to see my record that we actually got from a teacher in my high school that gave it to us, and we didn't give it back, but of Shadows and Light. And he, you know, just to think like, you know, that he was interested in seeing that record, and because it was just a moment in his life, you know, a chapter. And I, anyways,
when did you grab their albums? Like, when did you start? Was it when you listened, when you knew you were going to work with them? Then you got hip to their.
Yeah, I got further in once we started playing, because Kev knew the Persuasion stuff through the Lou stuff, and then also the Zapper record that they did.
Crazy, wow.
Persuasion does Zappa or something. I forget.
I love when things like that. People who like the Persuasions, who they're iconic and they're a big part of musical history, but they're not. It's not the Temptations, and it's not somebody that big, but it's somebody that was still really special and affected a lot of people. And whenever they can be kind of lifted up and still seen to a bigger audience who needs to experience this stuff, it's my favorite thing, man. My favorite thing.
And yeah, totally. And they were guys who kept true to the a cappella thing. You know, they got that record called Still Don't Got No Band or something.
I heard that one. That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyways, you know, that's something I crave. Like, you think about that, just that pure thing. I mean, I think them playing with us was a sort of like definitely a step out, because they have been really true to keeping, you know, other than their collaborations, when they do a record, they do it a cappella, and that is something that will never grow old. Like, just hearing those voices. And I always felt sometimes with a cappella or vocal bands that, you know, once there's instruments in there, you know, sometimes it gets in the way of the timbre of the vocals.
Yeah, and the magic.
That's all. I just want to hear that. Yeah. I want to get as close to that sound, and inside, you know, that feeling that I had when we were sitting around a table in Brooklyn, and actually it wasn't Brooklyn. It was in Central Park. Wow. We had a gig there, and we were just. I want that feeling of being at a table with all those voices, and
dude, I love that you're still so pure, man. Like, you're really you're a pure musician, you know, the things that you're talking about and the things that like still move you to this day after all these years of being in it, and being in it at the level that you've been able to be in it at. It's just, it's really cool, man. It's refreshing to hear, you know.
Well, yeah, I think
you're every bit as special, in my opinion. Hearing you talk, man, you are every bit as special as the 80-year-old dude from the Spaniels who's still doing it and who still has that joy in their heart. I'm so glad that, like, you know, the world of music has somebody with your vibe in it. You know, that's really cool.
Well, man, I aspire to get, you know, 80 years of singing. that is something to aspire to, and that's the thing. You know, that there was a sad chapter with our with the Persuasions, because, you know, Jimmy passed away. Yeah. While we were touring that record. Oh. Yeah. And so I did not when you talk about, you know, living a life of singing and, you know, getting up to, you know, living that long on earth, you know, 80 years, or I think Jimmy was late 70s. Wow. It was hard. It was hard for people that knew him his whole life, but for me, it was like, I was like, this is a mentor, man. Jimmy is really, you know, I have so much to learn from this guy, you know, and he was really, you know, generous with, you know, stories and just like teaching by example. Man. And so I really missed that opportunity to have more time with him. But I remember the last gig. I think it must have been the last gig he did, because he had oxygen on stage, and it was amazing because he sang the best he had ever sung. Like, wow. In my experience, like with singing with him, it was the last gig, and he was on a stool, and he just was like singing for his life. He was just singing like, I am going to do this the best possible. He was concentrating so hard on everything, and oh man, I just could feel it, and I keep that with me, you know, because like I said, there was just so much to learn from Jimmy, and I miss him, you know.
It's beautiful that you had that experience. My God, dude. And you know, you guys covered a track that I forgot about, because I'd never heard the song before till I heard the Persuasions do it, and I always loved his delivery on it. And then you guys did it, that good times. Oh yeah. And I thought, this is I couldn't believe I was hearing that covered, you know, with you guys. It was so awesome to hear, and never even heard that tune till I heard the Persuasions do it. And I found some other, like a compilation CD that they came out with, and man, just really cool. Yeah. Again, you're bringing that stuff up. Do you ever hear? There's this room. I don't know if they have them anywhere besides the States here. The City Winery. I did this show at a place called City Winery. It's a cool room, and what I did was I would do some of my stuff, but I was mainly making it this like old school soul sort of education, and I would do like a Curtis Mayfield song, but I would do like a song called This Must End, like a song that nobody's ever really heard, like a B-side,
right? A deeper,
beautiful song, just to let the crowd hear it. And then I would do, you know, It's All Right, you know, then I'd do like one of the hits. Yeah. But I did it purposely to like spoon feed these amazing songs that not everyone's hearing, you know. And man,
well, I think like I love that, just, you know, just hearing that your dad was a singer.
Yeah, dude, he did a show with there's still a poster, because I grew up in East Chicago, Indiana, right out of Chicago, which is next to Gary. So my dad was brought up alongside the Jackson 5, so they actually did a couple of shows together back in the day, right before Motown whisked the Jackson 5 away. And what's crazy is then where I grew up, everybody on the planet, everybody in that town outside of the city, they saw the Jackson 5 blow up. So when I grew up, there must have been a dozen amazing badass soul bands, because everybody, oh my God, you know, there was just in the culture around there after, and then they hear one of theirs, you know, hit with Motown and became like the biggest pop star in the world. So everyone and their sister was, you know, either in an a cappella group or in like a cool soul group. So
oh my God,
yeah, so cool, man. And there's so many groups that I grew up listening to.
You gotta document that, man.
Yeah, I'm trying. I really should. Yeah.
Because that, just to hear like an explosion of that kind of like singing and pride and culture in a neighborhood, like probably a huge like part of the city is like, that's something like that's what I could only equate to is that feeling I got from my music camp, from all these professional musicians coming into the schools and sharing their thing with the students, like that I can relate. But to hear that you had it in a community, like, and that it was sort of led by this celebration of like the Jacksons, and like that needs to keep happening.
Yeah, you're right. Because there's and it's weird. What I love is that the parents of those groups, and now I'm the son of one of those singers, and I was brought up in that world, and a lot of the singers and musicians that have come from that culture are now major players in Chicago, and Chicago's like third biggest market in the U.S. And it's so cool I know it. Some people ask me, like, what's going on with this Northwest Indiana thing? And I know where it all stemmed from, and I see it. I mean, I'm one of them. Again, I'm not like, I'm not you, for sure. But I'm a working guy in the city of Chicago, and I'm doing well. And I know it's all through everything I do, even when I'm doing something that's in the vein of, I have to do something in the vein of a Fall Out Boy or something. It's all a callback to that old kind of soul delivery and heart and everything, and it's man, there's something special about that whole outlook and that whole vibe. And what really helped too is
it's community
too, right? Oh, like, dude, I've tried really hard in certain areas to create community among players, because especially the younger players I work with, or younger singers, they're getting brought up in this American Idol culture, which is not the healthiest.
It's like this, like we wouldn't, my idols would never win American Idol. Like,
oh, that's interestingly
Neil
put.
Young, Neil Young, Willie Nelson,
they wouldn't have done well.
Like,
but it's funny,
even like Lou Reed, like it's just, it's a style, and it's a thing. It's sort of.
Well, I think it's like the heart too. Don't you think? There's a thing where they're thinking of the pageantry of it too much, as opposed to like.
What are they singing about? What's your story?
Yeah, and if it's if it's not your story, then put your emotion into whatever story you're singing. But I think what the problem is, a lot of these kids come up and they're just learning how to put every trick in the book they have into that one song, because they only have one shot, but then they don't know how to stretch that out for 2 hours in a show. And I'm seeing that it's really that weird.
Just comes that, but I think what that comes, learning how to do that comes from, being sort of brought into a community and learning from, the older players. Like for me, it was like, it's funny, like I didn't have the R&B thing, but I got it in a lot of eclectic ways. One would be through the school, through symphonies, playing that, but also my music teacher allowed me to be in her band.
Oh, really? Like the actual band?
Her band, her band was called Bobby Brown and the Scottish Accent. So I would go out.
Wait a minute, give me the age range. What was the age range of the members?
Oh, well, Bobby was like, I was, I guess, 17, and Bobby was 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
So, and he is he was a real masterful, he was an accordion player, and he was masterful at like these arrangements that, and I got to really being the bass player, really get inside the movement under these, Scottish melodies, right? And so we'd be playing jigs and reels, stress bass, and all night long, and it was for dancing. And I was playing with this band had been together for years and years and years, and I was, like you say, the young people, they're going for that, American Idol kind of thing, or Canadian Idol, whereas in this situation, I was being mentored into learning how to groove. And I remember we went down to this North Carolina festival. It was for like a Celtic kind of thing, and it was, you're a dance band, so I remember we got down there, we started playing, and the groove was so wide, no one could get out of it. It was just so, we were all so tuned in. It was like, I was 17, I was like, oh, I get it. Like this swing that is happening right now that's what you're going for every time, and so I kind of learned through doing and being brought into it.
And you were surrounded by older people?
Yeah. The drummer Warren, he was my age, but the piano player, the second accordion and main accordion, Bobby. There was Dawn on piano, and Kathy, my music teacher at high school, and Bobby was main stuff. So it would be like, up.
This is kind of the Scottish vibe right there.
Well, that's a jig, right? So
okay.
so it would be like, so that would be one of them. The other one is
it really
that'd be the real.
Give me the one with the jig though. The first one you did. It's so weird how much that sounds reminiscent of like the Stevie Wonder. We'll be jamming. Only you. Right?
Yeah.
The jig vibe had that kind of that groove. That's interesting.
And it's like you're playing for people dancing, so you gotta make sure that it's, you gotta make sure that's feeling good. And so
wow.
that was, I think that thing that community thing, like the generations influencing each other.
How much
do
you
go
attribute
the other way too?
How much do you attribute your attitude even though to that? Because my first training was when my dad's group got back together after like 16 years, and they got back together, and they kind of, that was my first sort of schooling into singing and harmony and stuff. But what I noticed was they didn't care about where they were going to play or nothing like that. They didn't care about the crowds. They were all in their 50s. So they didn't have that kind of 22-year-old ego problem. The chick's going to like me. Are they going to like you more? Oh, wait, how come they're looking at him? That was gone. It was just these old dudes who wanted to make music.
Just singing.
So then when I was 13, my first introduction to being in a band was with these 50-year-olds who just wanted... Yeah. I mean, man, as soon as they walked into the basement for rehearsal, as soon as the instruments were turned on, just joy and laughter. And no matter what was going on, when they were on stage, same thing. So I didn't get exposed to like an ego thing or a jealousy thing until I joined, choir in college. So I don't know, did you feel that? Like there's something to be said for your first band or a band in your early years having these older statesmen and women, or whatever, in the group, right?
Yeah, I when I got to play with people who had experience, and I remember I used to jam with this guy Jimmy. What's his last name? I can't remember. Anyways, it was after we played old age homes in our retirement homes in our neighborhood, and. I just learned his songs and I've got to play, and there was something about playing with him that really grabbed me, like it was also the real joy that it gave to the people that we were playing for. And then every once in a while after the rehearsal with Jimmy, he played violin, we would jam, and there would be a couple characters playing, I remember this one guy was super funky on a hollow body Gretsch, And I remember I just learned how to play the blues with those guys, and I was like, okay, I can play with these guys, and then you get together with your friends and you have something to share, and
you have like you're coming to like a younger group, like being your friends with all of a sudden these seasoned ideas, and it ends up really helping your friends out.
Yeah, it gives you sort of a legit understanding of how things fit together.
Yeah, I almost had to when I got my first group with like a bunch of 16-year-olds, I had to like watch my step, because at first I'm like, yeah, what do you guys think? And this is the 80s. So how about this song, by the Delphonics? And they're like, what? Shut the hell up. We're not doing that. We're going to do Bizarre Love Triangle, But once I figured out where I could go and where I couldn't go, I was basically conceptually bringing like the vibe and the joy and the feel that I learned from the 50-year-olds to the 16-year-olds. And then lo and behold, it gives you a different polish than if you're just for the first time doing your first band is just a bunch of 16-year-olds in the garage. There's something that the older folks, we have a lot to learn from them, man. It's
no, that kind of I come back to the Persuasions. Ray was a real he's the high singer, mm-hmm. and he was really he was paying attention to what I was doing, and he'd say we'd have a 2-day session when we record the record, and after the first day he goes, well, tomorrow let's see what you got coming. See what you got to come up with. It's like he's like he knows that he was paying attention, and I couldn't believe, like, he was so clear up top, like he was the high singing guy in the band, and it was just like so clear. Jeez. And in his stories also of, he was telling me some stories about doo-wop back in the day, and really how it really was, there was discrimination, and they were kind of like on their own, they, like the club owners, they wouldn't respect them, but he lived through that whole time, and the knowledge they bring, and their intention of really sharing joy through music. You don't take it for granted, because they've gone through a lot of, they've basically plowed the way for the rest of us in music, and get through all those times where it was like there was discrimination, from club owners, from whatever, left, right, and center, and they were just wanting to sing and perform, and even to do that in the face of, probably it wasn't what your family wanted you to do. They wanted you to go to school and earn money, get a job, and to go and sing in a doo-wop band. That's
what's tough is
it's gutsy.
I can't imagine. I would think you hear about like the famous all African American like Motown acts during the rough years of the '60s with discrimination, and those were acts with more money, and a little more clout, and they still got pushed around and bossed around, treated, mistreated on the South. But then you think of someone like the Persuasions who are doing it, and they were kind of mid-level. They weren't as successful as Motown, and it had to be even harder. It had to be extra rough, because maybe the temps who still had some really rough days, depending on where the bus was going that week, could maybe Barry Gordy could afford the hotel in the next town or something. But when you don't have a Motown payroll and you're going through the discrimination, not to take away from what the Motown folks went through either, but it had to be even harder without a bankroll and a bigger name.
Because they were moving from place to place, and not every place was accepting and evolved enough,
I want to delve. Go on.
No, I was just that's it, man.
No, it's all I got. Let me just have some chili, and I want to delve into you personally, though. Into your tale. Do you need the 60-second break? We take a little break in the middle of every show.
It's okay. Yeah. I'm good to go.
You're good to go? All right. Here the main thing I want to get into is, so you get into the music thing, and man, all of a sudden, between this eclectic vibe you have and then the ability to work with older musicians, which I think is golden and says a lot about
the opportunity.
You. Oh man, says a lot about you. But when you meet the guys, then were they like-minded, and did the whole band kind of come together at once for the Barenaked Ladies? Like how did that happen from your perspective?
yeah. From my perspective, I was playing in my high school band, like with my brother. You know, I played bass, he played drums, and we had Rob singing, or Rob Morin singing. Warren Beasley was, he was actually in one of the other bands for a while. Then he played guitar for us. I had a horn section with my buddy Eric, and Scott and Mark Buhner, who we had this. Our friends were our band, and so I went through, and we had these variety shows at my school where we were the pit band. And so whatever they'd throw at us, we'd play, like whether it was a modern dance piece, we'd kind of create some music for it, or if it was Whitney Houston, we got behind that and figured out how to make that work. Cool. And so it was a kind of it was a constant creation together and learning about music as we go. Selfishly, I usually proposed songs to the band that had a good bass part. Of course. So of course we played Call Me Al.
Nice.
Anyways,
wait a minute. How old were you?
Well, I was 16.
How'd you handle that bass lick?
Well, it's played and then reversed back, right? So it's very hard to do. But I learned it. I got a fretless bass just because of Graceland.
Nice.
I love that sound. Anyways, then Ed, met Andy at the music camp. I was talking about where we had itinerant music teachers came in to school, and they had us all at the end of the year come to this camp, and he met Ed, and I knew Steve from that camp as well. And so Ed played in my high school band that was kind of, we did like Blues Brothers and stuff, like we learned, music that we knew that was, Blues Brothers is just doing versions of older music. So that's how we came to it, through that stuff. But long story short, Ed played in my high school band, and then he was doing the same thing with Steve at that time, doing that duo stuff where they were kind of but doing original music. Now, we did original music in my band, but mostly instrumentals. Mm-hmm. And I think when my brother and I joined Steve and Ed as Barenaked Ladies, it was, for me, it was like it was a giving credit to like original music and, creating your own songs. And so I hadn't put as much emphasis into that. Like, I mean, we did a lot of instrumentals. We created a lot of tunes that we played. But it really was this, and this idea of finding your own voice lyrically was new. And so we kind of joined forces. Andy and I accompanied Steve and Ed at a yearly gig that they did, and then we just kept playing with them. So
there's a comedic and really intelligent vibe to their writing. Did they kind of share the lyric chores, or did one kind of handle more lyrical content than the other when you guys were doing the thing early on?
Well, it's evolved through time, but at the very first sort of introduction that Steve and Ed had to performing was opening for a band called Corky and the Juice Pigs. And yeah, that's almost as good as Punjabi Chili.
Yeah, I was going to say almost.
But yeah, almost as good. But they were a musical, comedy act, but they were brilliant, and it was all about pacing, and it was like they had some, don't put a pickle on my burger 'cause it reminds me of my girl. Like it's just like silly songs, and we're just like I love them anyways. Basketball ass. Basketball.
So wait a minute, this was that group was writing that stuff? This is what that group was writing, or this is what Steve and Ed were writing?
Yeah. Okay. No, that's not Barenaked Ladies.
Okay.
But Steve and Ed were influenced by it.
Okay.
And had opened for them across Canada. They did a full Canadian tour, and Andy and I played with them on a Toronto gig halfway through that tour. And then then we just started playing gigs.
And then the name came into existence at that time?
No, they were Barenaked Ladies, while they were opening for Corky and the Juice Pigs.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was kind of, they were a duo as Barenaked Ladies a year before I joined.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so funny because it's such there could be some of that stuff just sounds like a stand-up comedian, the cleverness of it and where they go lyrically. And, you guys are all just so in. That's what I like. Everyone kind of commits, and I think that's what made those tunes work, And then there's a uniqueness to it, too. Nobody really expects the kind of almost rap song part that's going to happen in 1 week. I remember everyone in the world wanted to memorize 1 week, and it was like this badge of honor when dudes learned that part.
Yeah. Oh, right. In the cover world. That's hilarious.
In the cover world, everybody was just like, oh man, he did it pretty well. And then of course the $1 Million Song was. It was just an iconic thing, especially, what became so popular was your live versions of that, because they'd be slightly different. There'd be some improv involved, and you'd hear a different version of it depending on the live show. So it was really unique what you guys did, man. I'm just
we quote songs in the middle of $1 Million, whatever kind of train of thought went by, but
that's fun.
Yeah, and I think that even though they were opening for Corky and the Juice Pigs, they still sort of played songs that weren't just songs that were light or just sort of trying to get laughs. I wouldn't say they ever were trying to get laughs, but they were. They were. So when Andy and I joined, we could really sort of explore. We like to kind of. Sort of present our set or a record like a conversation like we're having.
I was just gonna say
it covers everything.
Yeah, and when you say jokes, you're so correct, because none of it ever felt when it did get witty or funny, it never felt like a punchline. It just felt like somebody who really figured out, somebody who has kind of a witty delivery figured out how to place that into a song, as opposed in a way, to like sort of a Weird Al or somebody who's going for the punchline.
Yeah, who respect for Weird Al.
Yeah, tons.
Shout out to the
man. Yes,
we got to play on a show actually once.
What?
And
how was he?
And he was great. He was awesome.
Nice guy.
He is who you'd think. Yeah, he is who he presents himself as. Like very down to earth and. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, man. Were you guys, at what point, you guys form as a full band, but then at one point are you thinking, okay, now let's, we're going to form a band to like record and make it? Like, was that the goal right off the bat when you guys formed? Were you thinking, all right, to the top of the mountain, or, what was the thought there?
Okay, well, I don't know. I mean, I think everybody in the band had their own ideas. Mm-hmm. We didn't.
What was Jim's idea?
I think we all. Yeah, my idea was I was going to U of T for classical bass, and I was playing like 3 shows a week with Barenaked Ladies, trying to keep it together. But I think one thing that we all share as a band is when if we're doing something, we want to do it well, and we're going to take advantage of every opportunity that comes to us, and we're going to be ready for those opportunities. And so we didn't shy away from any challenge, and so we just kept playing, and slowly our audience kind of we didn't recognize anybody in the audience, and that was a real exciting thing, because we had worn out our friends. They just had lives to live. They couldn't see us every night. But I think what we just kind of took it step by step, and we had opportunities along the way, and we took it. I think Steve at that time was really working hard to give our tape to people. Like, you know, we entered into a contest that we actually were lucky enough to win, a CFNY music competition. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like, you know, the winner won enough money to make a record. And so it was an incredible opportunity. And so we all of a sudden were like, from making, you know, tapes with 5 songs, to, you know, we're going to make a record. So we had to find a producer, and we found Michael Philip Voyevoda, and who did some work with Jane Sibley and the Rio Statics and people we liked. And nice. We went up to Morin Heights, Quebec, and recorded it, you know. But we also committed to what we were doing. I took a year. I thought it was going to be a year off from learning how to be a symphonic bass player at U of T from my teacher Tom Monahan. To I thought I was taking a year off from that, just go tour with the Barenaked Ladies, but it turned into a 30-year career.
It's a 30-year break.
It wasn't, if anything, you know, as far as making a commitment, it was really hard for me to leave that behind, because I'd made a commitment to that. And Tom was he was a pretty stubborn guy. And he didn't appreciate me saying, look, I'm going to take off for a year, you know.
It's interesting to jump into success at the level that you reached it, and then keep the kind of the feet on the ground. And I think any level of success, everybody can lose it a little bit. But what was the moment that it felt like, you know, is there a defining moment you can recall that felt like, oh, we're something here. This is a big deal now. We're not, you know, not just building and climbing it, you know what I mean? I remember moments like what I said, when all of a sudden people were in the audience in our local clubs in Toronto that we didn't recognize, you know, that our word was getting out there. That was exciting. And there was other, you know, we got winning the CFNY competition to make a record was a huge thing. The other thing, you know, we won a little award, the YTV award, you know, for being best youth band. You know, there's little things where we were getting acknowledged, which was really cool. But I'm wondering what what was the big moment where you just felt like, oh,
I realize now when I'm 50 years old that those were big moments.
Oh,
but I'll tell you something that I think at the time it's funny, you know, at the time sometimes you realize that you weren't exactly aware of what was happening.
Wow.
You know, you were just kind of keeping going. But I remember, you know, in Canada when we played to 8,000 people at the Toronto Forum, and like that was our first big gig. It was kind of a funny gig. They had like bungee jumping outside the gig, and so before we went on, we dove off this crane, and so we were so freaking like amped on adrenaline. I remember my eyes felt like they were popping out of my head. But anyways, that was one. It was the live shows, because that's when you really feel the people. You know, you really feel the momentum and the excitement. So I remember that show for one. I remember in the U.S. when we released Stunt, we thought we were going to like a record store signing and play kind of thing, but we were actually stuck in traffic. And this is 1998 now.
Okay.
And we were stuck in traffic, and we're like, "What's going on? Like, what's going on? We're trying to get to this gig." And somebody said, like a record guy phoned us and said, "You guys are stuck in traffic because it's for you." and so we eventually they moved the record store signing play to City Hall. Like the mayor let us put on a show in the middle of the city, and there were like 80,000 people people in trees, people looking like getting a good view from a parking garage, people wrapped around the side of the building. So many people.
Jeez.
And I was like, okay, this is another level.
That's wow, man.
And we signed autographs for like 4 hours. We just were like, okay, we're gonna, everybody who wants one, we're here. We're not,
Are you pretty good with that?
this is-
I mean, with the fans and stuff, especially when you were like at the height, did it? How did you handle that? I mean, did it get to that point where you're at a restaurant and people are coming up to you or things like that?
I never really had a problem with it because most of the time people are respectful,
That's great.
And honestly, if you just sort of like, just give a little bit of time, people are good with it, and it's not like, I'm not getting, the paparazzi after me, but, if I'm going to have,
well, not yet. When the chili thing blows up, it's going to get a little ridiculous.
well, yeah, that's going to be a new chapter in my life.
Prepare
where I'm gonna
yourself.
Have to get some big shades and a nice hat. Like, no, you're a hat wearing guy. You like wearing hats, right?
I do like wearing hats. Yeah, you're going to have to become a hat guy, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna look you up. I'm gonna look up the American version of Punjabi Chili and say, okay, I need help in the hat department.
I started wearing this hat because I found it in some little shop, and I always loved Indiana Jones movies, and I always dug Gene Kelly when he threw a hat on, and I thought and it's kind of that old school hat, and I thought it was cool, and then the crowd and fans started getting so into the hat that I'd show up to a gig, and they would start asking for the hat, like, "Hey, we're gonna see the hat like it's a puppet." It's really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know what? You're actually talking to a hat guy, because I was a hat guy.
Really?
For the first 4 years of the band, I wore like a kind of a Scottish looking beret kind of thing.
So,
and because you know what? It was a Jacko. It was a nod to Jacko,
Okay.
but it kind of had it was my grandfather's hat, and I just wore it, so that it became like this thing.
That's cool.
And again, the same thing happened to me where I was like, oh, this is a thing now. I'm not just wearing a hat.
yeah, it's a character.
And I was like, ugh. And then eventually I grew my hair out. I went through this transition where I grew my hair really, really long. I had big red dreads, and it blew out the hat. It was like, okay, I'm going.
This is my new hat. It's called
I got
my
a new
hair.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called my hair.
There are a couple.
It's red and it's big.
There's a couple of corporate clients that put in the freaking contract, he's got to wear the hat. So it's weird, right? Like I get
There you
that.
go.
That's a real thing. It's strange, man. So when you're
Well, but in a way, it's saying something when the fact that you're saying that you came from an R&B community, and your dad was like a singer, and you have that connection to tradition of music, then it makes sense with the hat.
I guess
But
so.
you don't want to be like typecast. You don't want to typecast yourself.
And I'll throw something different on for whatever, making a video or something like a quarantine singing from home thing. But I remember the first time I threw a different hat on to a particular crowd that was maybe more my fan base. It wasn't like a corporate thing, and a couple girls came up to me and they're just looking at it and they're just saying, it's we don't want to tell you we don't like this. It's just it's not the hat.
Right.
That's when I realized,
Right.
like, oh, this thing's with me.
Yeah.
So
Wow, you got to listen to the tastemakers for sure, man.
So every CD, I've got 3 CDs out. There's only one that's floating around on Spotify and stuff, and out there for everybody to hear it. But everything, you see the hat on every cover. So if you, yeah,
Yeah. I eventually weaned myself off the hat. And
nice move.
But but it was very dramatic. I didn't do it in a subtle way.
Well, the hats probably started
actually,
drinking.
I was compared to people thought I was Carrot Top because Carrot Top had a similar look and he was doing it at the same time. And so one time we were doing the morning show, Regis and Kelly, and he was on the show. So there we were in the green room together, and I was like, man, I got the Carrot Top thing a lot. And he was like, guess what? I got you a lot.
No.
so we were commiserating about being, compared to the other guy.
That's insane. Really?
Yeah. Like I'd be walking off planes and they'd be like, we have, the stewardesses, when you say goodbye, thank you, they're like, we have been talking and we're having a bet up here that you are Carrot Top. And I was like, I'm not Carrot Top, but I'm something else. And they went, it is Carrot Top. And I went, no, that's not what I meant. I'm a bass player.
Oh, no. Well, I guess that leads me to this line of thought. Like, when you find the levels of the success and you start realizing that, when were you starting to get starstruck? Because, I mean, obviously, like the Persuasions thing sounds like a cool thing. But, like, when early on in the heyday, because then when you guys are, like, scoring the top 10 hits and everything, you're when you guys are really hitting big, that puts you in an arena and probably in the same space as a couple of pretty major acts. And when were you like starstruck? Was there anybody in particular?
Well, yeah, I mean, we got asked to do bridge school with Neil Young, and that was amazing. I mean, being on stage with Neil was incredible. Sarah McLachlan was there, and I was lucky enough to be able to play on one of her records too.
Now, how is she? How is she?
Oh man, she's awesome. She's, again, if you hear her singing and you're getting like, she is her singing. She is that compassionate person. She's that person who's cares about friends, who she's a real person.
I love that. See, I'm so interested in those people because, again, I've been able to meet a lot, and it's almost split down the middle. Half the people can have like a little something, a little anger, a little attitude, and you realize as soon as they're off the stage or as soon as the cameras are off, they're totally different. And I remember I get surprised often, like, oh no, this person's a jerk. Like, I loved you and you're an asshole. But then there are other people that I meet, you being one of them, where it's like, there it is, even nicer than I would have guessed, and I love when I meet that. So it's nice that you kind of have those memories as well. I'm sure you've run into, the other two.
Well, Neil Young is an example of of the person that he is, who the person that's in his songs, that the songs that he sings, how he sings, the choices he makes. Like, he's someone that I continually look for direction, and so I, him asking us to play bridge school, to help his son's school, it was a huge thing, and always be grateful for that. I mean, we got to know the crew too, and just got to see how that community works together. And it was big, lesson for us. And we're lucky we've had our crew for 30 years. Like, as long as we've been doing this, we've kept our crew, and seeing Neil's thing was real, cemented our belief that it's to really be good to your people.
Oh, that's great. What did you do? Like, how did you handle that first bit of like financial success? Was there any kind of crazy thing, or were you all right, or did you do the fancy car thing? What was your thing? Like,
I was lucky. I think my dad was a teacher, my mom was a piano teacher. I didn't feel like I needed anything more when I was a kid. Growing up,
Yeah.
we were middle class, and I was lucky. Like, I didn't feel that I needed anything other to be happy. I found music, and that's what made me happy. And running, like I'm a runner as well, and I those things make me happy, and my friends, and so I didn't really have a desire to spend money.
That's great.
But I did do a couple tours with my brother, and we rented a bus, which definitely cost a lot of money. I was like, we're doing a tour, but I want to rent the bus, and it is not cheap to rent a bus, especially when you're playing gigs that were not, making a lot of money, but they're modest gigs, Anyways, like smaller places, I play with my brother with the Brothers Creeggan. And
how often were you doing that? That's still...
Well, I did a couple cross North American tours. One we learned that the bus was too expensive, and we didn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
We just did it in a truck, and we did one in 2000, and we did another one in 2002.
That is so cool. Wait, how many pieces would that be though?
It was a trio.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
you
my
record
friend
with
Ian
that
McLaughlin.
Do you record with that act or?
Yeah, we got 4 records.
Oh, that's cool,
Brothers
man.
Creeggan.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Do you know Elliot Lewis is the keyboardist for Hall and Oates, and and every time they come to town, he's constantly recording solo stuff, and every time they come to a major city, they'll do a big room in Chicago, and then the next day he's doing like a 50-seater, just his solo show, and he'll do it everywhere he goes, which is so badass,
Yeah, that's really cool. And also, I find when that keeps him engaged, and he sees the gig from, if he's playing, being a supportive musician in one gig, and then he's the headline, he's the guy up front of the stage, and another one, he's going to know what it's like to be in both positions. That helps musicians get a little perspective when you got to put yourself on the line. You can't just, if you're just hanging back all the time, you won't truly know what it's like to be holding the show together as a lead player or singer.
Well put, man. And it's weird because I can't remember the term you and I came up with when we were hanging out that day. It's like band smarts or something. Crap.
Yeah, there was something we were talking about. I was coined by a bass player in Toronto, my friend Maury. I don't know what it was, but it's basically, I think what we were talking about was understanding. Understanding group dynamics and how to navigate those things.
It's weird because at any level, it doesn't matter. World fame, local fame, the same kind of personality issues can sneak in there. And
yeah, I think in any job too, like any office. I mean, I think I heard the term like social intelligence was basically what it was, but we called it like band intelligence or band smarts or whatever.
Yeah.
It's band radar.
Well, because it's interesting, you gotta be band smart, and a lot of people, what I've noticed is that the success plays crazy games on people. I mean, I think when you get like huge success and there's a lot of money and then different influences, you can fall into into a bad scene, But even I think attention and accolades affect bands in a weird way because I've seen lead singers or lead guitarists, I've seen keyboardists, I've seen drummers, bass players. It doesn't really matter the position of the group. I've seen people just kind of start losing their way once the attention comes into play, and then they start creating these kind of different issues, and suddenly there's an ego thing, and they're thinking about stuff that isn't musical anymore, and then I have to usually cut myself from those people, and it's weird. It's almost like you're seeing what they're really doing it for in a way too. Like, oh man, you don't really truly love this, because I think if you truly love it, then you're gonna lose your way with levels of success, because the level of success can be a shock to the system anyway, right? But for some people, but then if you can navigate through that and find your way back to just that dude who loves playing music, then you were that all along. But if you can't get back there, then it makes me wonder, like, oh man, were you ever doing this just for the love of it at all? Or is this always about something else?
Yeah, I think definitely people come to it for different reasons, and I think for me, one of the main reasons for being involved in music is that I could respond to the job, like I just could help, Wow. It's like, because I could play bass. I could be, and fortunately there's a bass position in a lot of music, and so I always felt like, I know what to do here. There was that feeling like, I know what this needs, and I can help make it better. But I remember that clash, and I've talked about this with Tyler, my drummer, and at the beginning, he learned how to play very young on the drums and in marching bands and stuff. But I was just coming out of university where I was really putting a lot of time into practicing and improving, as a musician. And I think when Tyler and I were playing together our first tours, like I kept practicing on tour, I was like still working, but Tyler was very tuned into being social, and music being the social aspect of music he was really focused on that. Like he was really, and for me, I was just like I wanted to work on that swing a little more or something, and I was just like, it became this real sort of friction point for us at the very beginning, because he had a different focus than me, and so we had these big arguments, and it was all about the feel of the music. Like, I wanted him to drop the snare just a little later, don't push so much, and eventually what happened was I kind of, which wasn't good for me, this is a long-term thing. I eventually kind of resigned myself that the feel wasn't going to be as swinging as much as I thought I wanted it to be. But it's funny, at that moment that I kind of give up, he found his wife, and this is 8 years into the band.
Wow.
And as soon as he fell in love and got married, his swing started to happen.
No kidding.
And it was like, I was like, oh, it just happened on its own. Like he was looking for something, and musically it manifests itself in how it happened.
Wow. See, and because you just don't know. I mean, between whether it's, again, attention or just all the things that come with being in a band at any level, it's something, it plays on the senses, and sometimes for certain folks, it could be really tricky to stay focused on the music. There's a lot of bright, shiny things happening around you. And that aspect for sure. But I think also if there's a void in someone, like as far as like their belief in themselves, or which we all struggle with, it gets amplified when you're given that attention for doing one specific thing, and then it's hard to not get attached to that attention. Yeah, so the attention, it's crazy. Yeah.
And then once you're all sitting there with, your fellow bandmates, and maybe, they see other sides of you. Right. You don't want them to see that side of you. You want the side that everybody praising you for the, for your performance. You want that feeling all the time. And so that's where I think for a personality that is craving those highs, they'll look for, I think substance abuse can play in at that level. I've never heard that take on it before. I've always thought like, oh, there was this thing, somebody tried it, they got hooked, but
the way you're breaking it down is a very unique outlook that makes a lot of sense that I never really thought of before. Just kind of almost replacing one high with the other. I've run into some things where I've worked with someone and they're so talented, but they either get involved in a different path or a wrong path for them and for the group, or maybe they just don't want it. And I want them to want it. Like, they're so good that in my mind I would almost force it. Like, no, you have to do this. You're great at this.
It's funny.
This is what you were meant to do. And you're almost pushing them towards something that maybe, if I found it, I was pushing some people into a direction that maybe they just didn't want it as bad as I thought they should. And I just thought, well, if you're this good, you have to, this is what
Yeah.
And when you can't get them out, and you guys with Steve ran into, man, that had to be a rough time as a friend, but also the band and the struggles of that. And I don't know how much you want to chat on that, but, I like the lessons we have a lot of listeners who are people trying to get into the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think those are the pitfalls of performing. I think it's good to keep yourself, keep asking yourself, why you're doing it. And, hopefully it's for the love of the music, and often it is. It's just that sometimes the sort of the adulation, the attention that you get from performing can you get people addicted to that. But that's, if you keep your feet on the ground and really be good to your bandmates and to the people you're working with, good to the audience members, the people working the venue, your people representing you, the promoter, it's all an act of it's life. It's your actions are going to they're going to reflect how you feel inside. And the more you act in a positive and kind way to people, the more you'll get back, and the more you'll keep those pitfalls in check, like that.
You need to write a book, dude.
Seduced by, man.
You need to write a book.
Seduced by the excitement of the moment.
Yeah.
And also, well, that's just how I think for me it's always been there. And I had lessons early on that kind of woke me up to that. And it actually came in the form of running. When I was running, I was known as a really good runner, and when I was younger, long distance. And one time, I didn't really practice that hard, but I went out really fast, and I'm gonna win, And people are like, "Oh, you're gonna win," and I was like, I'm gonna win," and but I didn't check in my heart that I wasn't prepared, and I was afraid of not winning. And what was that? So I went out really hard, and I just slammed myself. I got this lactic acid buildup. I was kind of stumbling. I was drunk on just lactic acid, or it was crazy. Wow. And I was like, why would I do that to myself? And I had to dig deep. And I think it was ultimately because I was attached to those projections that people were putting on me that I was going to win. But that's not why I had to reevaluate why I liked running, and why, and ultimately I'm grateful for being able to get exercise and get out, and I can still run right now, which is great. And
wow.
But I had to really own it. And I think that applies to music as well. When you get projected on, it's so easy to take the bait and make those projections a part of, be your identity, but it's wait a minute, no, why are you doing it? You got to bring it back. I remember, I don't know if it was Keith Jarrett or something, he was saying he's always bringing it back to those first notes that really turned him on to music.
Wow. That's amazing.
Always
man.
Bring it back to that moment.
And I guess some people might not have that experience, you were able to have that working with an older group way back in the day. But then, the way you kind of nourished your love of music, but then even being able to apply that mindset to what you went through as a runner, You know, it's interesting because I guess some other people may not have some of those little gifts, but then hearing how you had to apply thought and some effort into your mindset and changing a few things for the running, it really is a combination, isn't it? It's a combination of being, being fortunate enough to have these experiences and these gifts, but then we still have to all work through the process with what we have, because we're all going to stray in a funny way, you know, and it is up to us, you know, so that's impressive.
Well, and what you were saying about, you know, what were those moments that, you know, where you really felt you'd been successful? And honestly, man, even at that, when I was describing going to Boston and seeing all those people coming to see us in the town square, I was probably a little bit inside my head and mad at one of the guys in the band, or, you know, or just like, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't able to fully appreciate it like I would with a little more experience under my belt, and realizing, oh man, we only live so long, and holy cow, this is amazing. Like, I think it takes time and experience too, and you got to allow yourself to, you know, have experiences. And slowly, I think the more you experience things and process those things, you realize, oh, wait a minute, this is what I care about, you know? I think it's, I know a lot of ways for me, maturing as a musician and an entertainer is about slowly learning how to appreciate what I have. And for some times I didn't appreciate what I had. And the things that I appreciated, which really counted and which really fed my soul, were the people, were the music, was those exchanges. And that's what I constantly try to go for as I move forward, you know. And I know it more now than I did then. But I knew it a little bit. I knew it a little bit then.
A little bit. It's just enough. It's
just enough.
Just enough to stay on track.
Yeah, just to appreciate people, appreciate what is happening.
I think when you're doing this job, when it turns into a job, everything can get a little rough after a while. You know, when I wait all my life to get to a point where I've got 6 gigs that week or whatever, and then when you got a month of that, all of a sudden you're like, you're a little tired, and you can almost be tainted and trying to like fight that. And so that's cool. Mm-hmm. I think that gets tough too. And then for you guys to go, you know, how hard was it, you know, and again, if it's not something to talk about, you know, no problem, but how hard was it to make a final decision as far as Steve goes? Because then you've got your own journey, but then part of your journey is, and your personal, you know, trials that you had to go through, you had to deal with another person's, because his trials ultimately become yours because you guys have this marriage through the band. I mean, how hard was it to kind of let that play out the way it played out? And I'm not sure exactly how it played out, if he decided to leave or if you guys decided, like, listen, we can't do it this way anymore. And I'm sure you guys put a ton of effort into making it work, you know, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, we came to a point, I think, and I say we came to a point. So when it, in terms of the band, like, I know that we've never done it before. We never arrived at that place before where we were 20 years in. And I had my own relationship to Steve, and I had a band relationship to Steve. So I had to learn how to maybe separate those two things and learn, like, where I stand in terms of the band, and what is my direct relationship with Steve.
And I'm sorry, for context, you know, I mean, you know, it became a little bit of a substance thing.
And that's another thing. No, he was charged with cocaine possession, and the charges were dropped. But I didn't know that part. Like, I didn't know what he was doing. Like, and I think that, you know, and it's 10 years ago now, I think, or more. And I haven't kept in touch with Steve, other than, you know, we got honored at the Junos a couple of years ago.
So for your end of it, what was becoming difficult?
Well, I think some of my relationship with Steve was difficult because I feel like there was times where he, like just what you said, you know, he wasn't happy in the band. And I remember having a conversation with him where it was like, hey, you're important here, you know? Like, you write most of our songs, you know, that's a huge deal. Like, I need you to appreciate this. It was kind of like the conversation you were saying you had with some of your friends, and when you're seeing them look the other way or not feel as, you know, worthy or whatever. So I knew that there was that feeling there, but then that feeling of not being happy inside for him came out and came at, you know, me at some times. And that was hard to work with, because I did feel, there's moments where I felt less than working with Steve, and because I think he felt less than inside his heart. And so there was this
there part of him that
this sort of like this house of cards that kind of eroded away, you know, because there was something that, you know, wasn't feeling whole for him.
And was he creating a longing to like just have a solo career at some point? Is that like kind of where
I think
his head was
that's
going?
what he's doing. That's what he's doing now, and he's putting out records, and I couldn't be more happy for him, you know. And I think it feels like it's the right thing. Like,
that's good. So
it's like I think it's almost like our journey couldn't continue the way it had been going, you know. And it's weird because it's really it's like at the roots there's something that has to move on, you know.
So it wasn't necessarily,
and you don't know it. It's hard to detect because it's in the dynamic, it's in the air, it's in how you are creative together. It's like it's changed. It really had come to an end. And I mean, there's still things I think that I wish that we had, you know, boxes we checked as a band with Steve before we parted ways, and that was getting more of a third party involved, you know, somebody so where you can all kind of like connect with, you know, and just say what we got to say to somebody, you know, a third party in the room. I heard other bands have done that.
There's no like rule book too, you know, you're going through it, and
there was no rule book, and it was we were growing apart.
We interrupt this podcast for a special announcement.
Oh, so close. We were so close to the end. I'm sorry. Did you guys hear that? Did you hear his voice cut off when we were growing a pop. Technology, man. Apparently his recording system shut down on him on the other end, and we didn't even realize that it stopped. So we sort of kept talking for a couple of minutes. We sang a little bit, we talked a little bit more, and then realized that we weren't even recording. That took us right to the end. We still have the back end of this thing, so apologies, but hey, you know, maybe that's just a gift that this 50th episode was giving to me. I have these moments that are only between me and my new friend Jim. Anyway, here's the tail end of the podcast, and away we go. Man, I can't thank you enough for your time.
Yeah, Robbie, it's been good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me, and this is a good deal. I mean, it really does capture two guys sitting at a cafe waiting to play a gig kind of vibe.
You're the cream of the crop, man. Seriously, as a person, as a player, I really appreciate you. And yeah, man, let's we'll have to do it again in a couple of years when we get the Chili restaurant going.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work we got ahead of us. So let's get those kidney beans soaked, and the fennel and the ajwain seeds crushed to a fine paste.
Thanks again, man. You've been a treat. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. And say hey to your brother.
Paul is my brother, who's a big fan.
Hey, man. Appreciate.
Yeah,
that's the word. Appreciate Punjabi Chili. Yeah. Okay. Those are the words of the conversation. Okay, man.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Robbie. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, appreciate it. Bye.
Jim Creeggan of the Barenaked Ladies, ladies and gentlemen. So we got through it. It got a little tricky at the end because, hey, technology, what are you going to do? I hope you enjoyed the 50th episode. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And like I always say, enjoy your month, enjoy your week, enjoy your day. Go out and find your smile. Welcome to my life so far. You'd think by now I'd be a star. I may be long-winded, but hey, there's just so much I have to say. Maybe lick your lips when you're hungry. Maybe drop your head when you're sorry. Maybe shake a bit when you're worried. That's just